The sun had barely begun to rise over the city, casting a soft golden hue through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the sleek corporate office building. Inside, the hum of activity was already in full swing, keyboards clicking, phones ringing, and voices buzzing with urgency. It was a typical morning at Innovate Solutions, one of the most influential tech companies in the industry. The company's headquarters stood as a monument to innovation, filled with cutting-edge technology that powered everything from global supply chains to advanced AI systems. But amidst this bustling hive of progress, there was an unspoken tension, a secret buried deep within the walls of the company. Few people knew about it, and fewer still dared to speak of it. The story behind Innovate's meteoric rise wasn't just about brilliant minds or groundbreaking ideas. It was also about betrayal, resilience, and a quiet kind of vengeance that simmered beneath the surface. At the heart of this tangled web was Evelyn Harper. She wasn't like the other employees who rushed around the office wearing designer suits and carrying tablets loaded with presentations. Evelyn didn't work here anymore, not officially anyway. But her presence lingered everywhere, woven into the very fabric of the company she'd once dreamed of leading. Evelyn came from a family synonymous with success. The Harpers were known for their entrepreneurial spirit and their ability to turn even the smallest idea into a billion-dollar empire. Her father, Charles Harper, had founded Innovate decades ago when computers were still clunky machines confined to university labs. He'd built the company from scratch, instilling in his children a fierce drive to innovate and dominate. To outsiders, the Harper family seemed untouchable, a dynasty destined to shape the future of technology forever. Growing up, Evelyn had always felt out of place among her siblings. While her older brother Marcus excelled at coding and her younger sister Claire dazzled investors with polished pitches, Evelyn found herself drawn to something different. She wasn't interested in flashy gadgets or complex algorithms. Instead, she gravitated toward the human side of technology, the way it could connect people, solve problems, and transform lives. This passion led her to focus on user experience design, a field often dismissed by her family as soft, compared to hardcore engineering or business strategy. Despite their skepticism, Evelyn poured her heart into her work. Late nights spent sketching wireframes turned into early mornings testing prototypes. She envisioned a world where technology wasn't just functional but intuitive, accessible, and meaningful. Her projects weren't flashy, they didn't involve robots or virtual reality, but they worked seamlessly, making life easier for those who used them. And while her family never outright discouraged her, they made it clear what they thought of her contributions. "Nice hobby," her father would say dismissively after glancing at one of her designs. But real tech is about solving big problems. When Evelyn graduated at the top of her class, she expected to join Innovatech alongside her siblings. After all, the company was practically her birthright. But things didn't go as planned. During a tense family meeting held in the boardroom of Innovatech's headquarters, Evelyn presented her vision for integrating user-centric design principles into the company's product development process. She spoke passionately about how understanding the needs of everyday users could revolutionize their offerings and set them apart from competitors. For 30 minutes, she laid out her ideas, complete with data, case studies, and mock-ups. Her family listened in silence, their expressions unreadable. When she finished, there was a long pause before her father leaned back in his chair and sighed. "Evelyn," he began, his tone measured but firm, "you're talented, I'll give you that. But this isn't tech. This is decoration. We don't need someone painting pretty pictures, we need engineers, strategists, leaders." His words cut deeper than any knife ever could. Before she could respond, Marcus chimed in, echoing their father's sentiments. "You've got good instincts," he said, not unkindly, "but instincts aren't enough. You don't know tech like we do." By the time Claire added her 2 cents, something about how Evelyn's approach lacked scalability, the verdict was clear. They weren't rejecting her entirely, they simply refused to take her seriously. Evelyn left the room feeling hollow, her dreams crumbling under the weight of their dismissal. That night, she packed her bags and moved out, vowing never to return to Innovatech, or her family. What no one realized, however, was that Evelyn's departure marked the beginning of something extraordinary. Over the next few years, she quietly worked on her own projects, refining her methods and proving her worth outside the shadow of her family name. She freelanced for startups, consulting on everything from app interfaces to customer journey mapping. Her work became legendary in niche circles, earning praise from users who loved how effortlessly her designs fit into their lives. Yet despite her growing reputation, Evelyn remained invisible to the mainstream tech world, and especially to her family. Meanwhile, back at Innovate, cracks began to form. The company thrived on innovation, but its leadership struggled to keep pace with rapidly changing consumer expectations. Products that should have been blockbusters flopped because they were too complicated or ignored basic usability principles. Employees grew frustrated, turnover rates soared, and profits started to dip. In desperation, the board turned to external consultants to revamp their processes. One consultant recommended implementing a new framework focused on user experience, a concept so foreign to the Harpers that they initially balked at the idea. But desperate times called for desperate measures, and eventually, they agreed to give it a try. Unbeknownst to them, the framework they adopted bore a striking resemblance to Evelyn's work. Someone, no one knew exactly who, had shared her ideas online, and they spread like wildfire through open-source communities. Developers tinkered with her concepts, adapting them to fit various applications. By the time Innovate stumbled upon the framework, it had evolved far beyond its original form, becoming a cornerstone of modern software development. The irony was lost on the Harpers, who embraced the changes without questioning their origins. As Innovate transformed, so did its culture. Teams began collaborating more effectively, products improved dramatically, and customer satisfaction skyrocketed. Investors cheered, analysts praised, and the media hailed the company as a model of reinvention. Yet none of this mattered to Evelyn. She watched from afar, her emotions a volatile mix of pride and pain. Every glowing review of Innovate's new direction felt like both validation and salt in an old wound. One evening, Evelyn sat alone in her apartment, scrolling through articles about her family's latest triumphs. A headline caught her eye: How Innovate revolutionized tech with user-centric design. She clicked on the link, her chest tightening as she read glowing descriptions of features she'd pioneered years ago. There was no mention of her name, of course. To the world, these innovations belonged solely to Innovate. But Evelyn knew better. She saw traces of her fingerprints everywhere, in the intuitive navigation menus, the seamless transitions between screens, the subtle animations that guided users without overwhelming them. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them away. Crying wouldn't change anything. Instead, she opened her laptop and pulled up a file she hadn't touched in months. It contained sketches, notes, and half-finished projects, ideas she'd shelved after her family's rejection. For the first time in years, she felt compelled to revisit them. Maybe it was bitterness driving her, or maybe it was hope. Either way, she couldn't ignore the fire burning inside her. Over the following weeks, Evelyn threw herself into her work with renewed determination. She refined old concepts, explored new possibilities, and pushed boundaries she'd never dared to cross before. Her creations weren't just tools anymore, they were statements. Statements about resilience, creativity, and the power of staying true to oneself. And though she didn't yet know how, Evelyn sensed that her journey was far from over. Back at Innovate, tensions simmered beneath the surface. Despite the company's outward success, internal struggles persisted. Employees whispered about favoritism and outdated management practices. Some wondered why the Harper siblings continued to dominate decision-making when their rigid approaches often clashed with the very principles that had saved the company. Even Marcus, once confident in his leadership, found himself questioning whether he truly understood the forces propelling Innovate forward. One day, during a routine team meeting, a junior developer named Liam raised his hand hesitantly. "I've been reading about the history of user experience design," he said, glancing nervously at the executives seated around the table. "And I noticed something interesting. A lot of the foundational work we're using, it seems to trace back to someone named Evelyn Harper." The room fell silent. No one spoke. No one breathed. The name hung in the air like a ghost, haunting the very walls of the company it had helped build. The silence in the boardroom was deafening. Liam's words hung suspended, heavy with implications no one dared to voice. The executives exchanged uneasy glances, their faces a mix of confusion and discomfort. Marcus leaned forward slightly, his brow furrowed. "Evelyn Harper," he repeated, as if testing the name on his tongue for the first time in years. "What are you talking about?" Liam shifted nervously in his seat, acutely aware that all eyes were on him. He cleared his throat before continuing. "I was researching some of the frameworks we've integrated into our design process, the ones that have really turned things around for us, and I kept coming across references to Evelyn Harper. There are blog posts, forums, even academic papers crediting her with pioneering user-centric methodologies. It's kind of everywhere. Claire frowned, flipping through her notes distractedly. That can't be right, she said dismissively. If Evelyn had done anything groundbreaking, we would know about it. She hasn't been involved in tech since. Her voice trailed off, but the implication was clear, since we told her she wasn't good enough. Charles Harper, seated at the head of the table, remained unusually quiet. His fingers drummed lightly against the polished mahogany surface, betraying an uncharacteristic unease. For a man who prided himself on knowing every detail of his company's operations, this revelation felt like a crack in the foundation he'd spent decades building. "Are you sure about this?" he asked finally, his tone sharper than usual. "This isn't just some internet rumor?" "No, sir," Liam replied, now more confident. "It's credible. I mean, look at the timeline." A lot of these concepts started gaining traction online around the same time Evelyn left Innovate, and they align perfectly with the principles we're using now. Someone must have taken her work and shared it. The room erupted into murmurs, each executive grappling with the weight of what Liam had uncovered. Some looked skeptical, others intrigued, but none could deny the eerie parallels between Evelyn's vision and the very framework keeping Innovate afloat. Marcus rubbed his temples, visibly irritated. "Even if there's truth to this," he said gruffly, "what does it matter? The point is, we're succeeding because we adapted. That's what counts." But not everyone agreed. Across the table, Sarah Chun, the company's chief product officer, spoke up. "Actually, I think it matters a great deal," she said firmly. "We pride ourselves on innovation, yet here we are, relying on ideas we didn't create, or worse, didn't acknowledge. If Evelyn Harper truly laid the groundwork for what we're doing today, then we owe her recognition. At the very least, we owe her honesty." Her words struck a nerve. Charles shot her a sharp look, his jaw tightening. "Honesty won't change the fact that she walked away from this company," he snapped. "She made her choice. We moved on without her." "Did we?" Sarah countered, undeterred. "Or did we unknowingly build our success on her shoulders? You can't ignore the irony here, Charles. We dismissed her because we thought she didn't understand tech, and now it turns out her ideas might be the reason we're still relevant." The tension in the room thickened. For years, the Harpers had operated under the assumption that their family's collective brilliance was the sole force driving Innovate forward. Now, confronted with evidence to the contrary, cracks began to form, not just in their confidence but in their unity. Claire glanced at Marcus, searching for reassurance, but found only uncertainty reflected in his expression. Even Charles, usually unflappable, seemed shaken. As the meeting adjourned, the executives filed out silently, each lost in their own thoughts. But for Marcus, the weight of the conversation lingered long after the others had gone. He stood by the window, staring out at the city skyline, his mind racing. Memories of that fateful day when Evelyn presented her ideas flooded back. Her earnestness, her conviction, the way their father had dismissed her so casually. At the time, he'd agreed with Charles. Evelyn's approach had seemed too soft, too impractical. But now, looking back, he couldn't shake the feeling that they'd underestimated her, and perhaps paid a steep price for it. Meanwhile, Evelyn sat in her small home office, surrounded by sketches and sticky notes, her focus unwavering. Since rekindling her creative spark, she'd thrown herself into developing a new platform, a revolutionary tool designed to bridge the gap between technology and human emotion. Unlike anything currently on the market, it promised to personalize digital experiences in ways that went beyond mere convenience. It was bold, ambitious, and entirely hers. Yet despite her determination, doubts crept in. Could she trust herself to see this project through? After years of being told she wasn't good enough, the fear of failure loomed large. Still, she reminded herself why she'd started down this path in the first place. This wasn't just about proving her family wrong, it was about creating something meaningful, something that could make a difference. Her phone buzzed on the desk, interrupting her train of thought. It was a message from an unknown number. "We need to talk." Evelyn hesitated, her thumb hovering over the screen. Who could it be? Curiosity got the better of her, and she typed back cautiously. "Who is this?" The reply came almost instantly. "Marcus Harper." Her heart skipped a beat. Why would Marcus reach out to her now, after all these years? Suspicion clouded her judgment, but curiosity won out again. She responded tersely. "What do you want?" There was a pause before his next message appeared. "It's complicated. Can we meet?" Evelyn stared at the screen, torn between anger and intrigue. Part of her wanted to delete the message and move on, but another part, the part that still carried scars from their last encounter, was curious. What could possibly be important enough for Marcus to swallow his pride and contact her? After a moment's deliberation, she typed back. "Fine. 1 hour. My terms." They met in a quiet cafe on the outskirts of the city, far removed from the gleaming towers of Innovate headquarters. Evelyn arrived first, choosing a corner booth where she could observe without being seen. When Marcus walked in, she barely recognized him. Gone was the cocky older brother she remembered. In his place was a man burdened by responsibility, his once boyish features hardened by stress and regret. He spotted her immediately and approached hesitantly, as if unsure whether she'd actually show up. "Evelyn," he said softly, sliding into the seat across from her. "Thank you for meeting me." She crossed her arms, her expression guarded. "Don't thank me yet. Start talking." Marcus sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'm not sure where to begin. Things at Innovate, they've changed. We've changed. And recently we discovered something that made us realize how wrong we were about you." Evelyn raised an eyebrow, skepticism etched across her face. "Wrong about me? That's rich coming from you." "I deserve that," Marcus admitted, his voice tinged with guilt. "But hear me out. Do you remember those frameworks you proposed years ago? The ones Dad called decoration?" Her stomach tightened at the memory, but she nodded curtly. "Well, it turns out your ideas weren't just decoration, they were revolutionary. Someone took them and spread them online, and now they're the backbone of our entire operation. Without realizing it, we've been running Innovate on your work." For a moment, Evelyn didn't respond. She simply stared at him, her emotions swirling beneath the surface. Anger, vindication, sadness, all of it threatened to spill over. Finally she spoke, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "And what exactly do you expect me to say to that? Congratulations on finally figuring it out." "No," Marcus said quickly. "I don't expect anything. I came here to apologize, to tell you that we were wrong. About everything. Not just about your ideas, but about you. You've always been smarter than any of us gave you credit for." Evelyn leaned back in her chair, studying him carefully. Was this genuine remorse, or just damage control? Either way, it didn't change the past. "Apologies don't fix much, Marcus. They don't undo the years I spent doubting myself because of you. They don't erase the fact that my family abandoned me when I needed them most." "You're right," Marcus conceded. "They don't. But maybe they're a start." Before Evelyn could respond, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was an email notification. She glanced at the subject line and froze. It was from Innovate's legal team, an official request to discuss licensing agreements related to her designs. Her eyes darted back to Marcus, who looked equally stunned. "You didn't know about this, did you?" she asked sharply. He shook his head, his expression darkening. "No. But I think I know who did." As the pieces fell into place, Evelyn realized this confrontation was far from over. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain, her family's reckoning was only beginning. The revelation hit Evelyn like a tidal wave. Licensing agreements? Her designs? The implications swirled in her mind, each more unsettling than the last. She clenched her phone tightly, her knuckles whitening as she processed the situation. "What does this mean?" she asked Marcus, her voice low but laced with steel. "Are you saying Innovatech has been using my work, not just the ideas that leaked online, but actual designs I created?" Marcus looked away, his guilt palpable. He hesitated before answering, clearly struggling to find the right words. "I don't know all the details," he admitted. "But if there are licensing agreements involved, it means someone at the company recognized your contributions and decided to formalize them without telling us, or you." Evelyn's jaw tightened. Formalizing her contributions sounded almost noble until she realized what it really meant. Her family had commodified her creativity without ever acknowledging her role in their success. They hadn't sought her permission or given her credit, They'd simply found a way to legally exploit her work while keeping her name out of it. Her anger bubbled to the surface, but she forced herself to stay calm. "You came here to apologize," she said evenly, locking eyes with Marcus. "But actions speak louder than words. If you're serious about making things right, then tell me everything. Who initiated these agreements? How long have they been in place? And why am I only hearing about this now?" Marcus nodded slowly, understanding the gravity of her demand. "I'll get you answers," he promised. "But Evelyn, this isn't going to be easy. Dad won't take kindly to being called out for something like this. Neither will Claire. There's a lot of pride at stake." "Pride?" Evelyn shot back, her voice rising slightly. "My entire life was dismissed because of their pride. Don't talk to me about how hard this is for them when they've spent years profiting off my work without even knowing, or caring, that it was mine." Marcus flinched at her words, unable to argue. He knew she was right. "Okay," he said finally. "Let me dig into this. I'll figure out who's responsible and make sure you get the recognition and compensation you deserve." Evelyn studied him carefully, searching for any sign of insincerity. For once, Marcus didn't seem to be posturing or trying to manipulate her. His regret felt genuine, though whether it stemmed from guilt or self-preservation remained unclear. Still, she decided to give him the benefit of the doubt, for now. Back at Innovate headquarters, chaos erupted behind closed doors. Marcus wasted no time confronting Charles and Claire about the licensing agreements, presenting evidence that left both of them visibly shaken. It turned out that Sarah Chun, the chief product officer, had quietly spearheaded the effort to license Evelyn's designs after discovering their origins during her research. Fearing backlash from the Harper siblings, she'd kept the matter under wraps, ensuring that Evelyn received royalties without drawing attention to her identity. When confronted, Sarah stood her ground. "I did what I thought was best for the company, and for Evelyn," she explained firmly. "She deserved to be compensated for her work, even if none of you were ready to admit it." Charles exploded at first, railing against the betrayal and accusing Sarah of undermining his authority. But as the truth sank in, that his own daughter's brilliance had saved the company he cherished, he fell silent, his face pale with shame. Claire, too, seemed rattled, her usual confidence crumbling under the weight of their collective failure. Weeks later, Evelyn found herself standing outside Innovate's headquarters once again. This time, however, she wasn't alone. A small crowd of journalists, industry leaders, and former colleagues gathered around her, awaiting the press conference that would change everything. Inside the building, the Harpers waited nervously, unsure of how Evelyn would choose to handle the moment. When she stepped up to the podium, the room fell silent. Evelyn took a deep breath, her heart pounding as she scanned the faces before her. Finally, she began to speak. "For years I believed I wasn't good enough," she said, her voice steady yet tinged with emotion. "My passion for user experience design was dismissed as irrelevant, my ideas deemed unworthy of consideration. So I walked away, determined to prove myself on my own terms. What I didn't realize was that my journey wasn't just about proving others wrong, it was about finding the courage to trust myself." She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. "Today I stand here not to seek revenge or assign blame, but to share a simple truth. Innovation thrives when we embrace diverse perspectives. My family failed to see that once, but they've since taken steps to make amends. Innovatech has committed to recognizing my contributions, compensating me fairly, and integrating my vision into their future plans. While this doesn't erase the past, it marks the beginning of a new chapter, for me, for them, and for the tech industry as a whole." As Evelyn concluded her speech, applause erupted throughout the room. Tears streamed down her face, not from sadness, but from relief. For the first time in years, she felt truly seen. In the weeks that followed, Evelyn returned to Innovatech, not as an outsider but as a leader. Under her guidance, the company underwent a cultural transformation, prioritizing empathy and inclusivity alongside technological advancement. The Harpers, humbled by their mistakes, worked tirelessly to rebuild their relationship with her, though healing old wounds required patience and effort. And so, Evelyn's story became one of redemption, not just for herself, but for a family and a company that had nearly lost sight of what truly mattered. In the end, it wasn't about winning or losing, it was about creating something meaningful together. Something that connected people, solved problems, and transformed lives. exactly as Evelyn had always envisioned.